Welcome everyone to the third episode of the Little by Little Show. I want to welcome Nick Gilkey, a gut health coach, from being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis at 21, now being in remission for 4 years. He is the founder of a program helping people take control over their gut health. I hope you enjoy. Nick, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. How has the week been? How's everything?
It's good, man. It's good. The weather's beautiful. Enjoying it. How about you? Going pretty well?
Everything's amazing. I just had some lunch to get ready for the podcast. I'm very excited to get this down.
Where are you again? You're West Coast?
So I use EST, but I live in Mexico City. It's like
okay.
minus EST. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Awesome, man.
What about you?
I'm in Miami, Florida.
Perfect. Love it. Yeah, you look from there.
I'm originally from up north, so the weather here is a little bit nicer. I got to improve my tan a little bit.
Yeah, your melanin is fucking beautiful. That's why I kind of guessed for someone from there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get started on your story. What got you to the journey you are today? I don't want to kill this name, but you started this health journey diagnosed with ulcerative, if I'm correct, colitis.
Yeah,
ulcerative
colitis.
Ulcerative colitis. Okay, when you were 21, now you're treating people with gut problems.
So when I was diagnosed, I was 21 years old. So before that, never really dealt with any like serious health issues. I'd always kind of had like symptoms here and there, like being tired or just being bloated, just minor symptoms here and there. Never really thought anything of it. And then when I was 21, that's where everything kind of got, really bad. So went to the emergency room, went through all kinds of testing, got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And that's what kind of started all of this for me. So it got to the point where it was so bad, I had to basically put everything else on hold, career, family, everything. Just like this was destroying every aspect of my life. So I spent, 5 years just studying and figuring out how to fix this problem. I had started with, what most people do, go through like the traditional healthcare system, wasn't getting any answers, wasn't feeling any better. And it's a pretty serious condition. If you don't get it under control, it can lead to a lot of very serious issues later on in life. So spent the time to understand how to fix this and was able to get it under control. I've had it in remission now for about 4 years. And now I've been able to help other people like you were mentioning. I just started, kind of posting on Twitter and Instagram, like videos about things that I did. And this is the diet that I use. These are the things that I tried. And just started getting a lot of people reaching out and saying, this is exactly what I'm dealing with. So started coaching people and working with them a little bit closer to help them, through that process.
Beautiful. So looking back to it now, what do you think maybe got that diagnosis? How did you live before that maybe caused that problem to exist?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with ulcerative colitis. So it's an autoimmune disease. They don't know much about it. They don't know what causes it. They don't know how to fix it. They don't really know anything about it. I think it was just the way that I was living before that. So I lived what most people would consider a healthy life. I was exercising, I played sports, ate relatively healthy, but it was like the standard quote unquote American diet. So it was a lot of like processed packaged foods, wasn't highest quality foods. I was, drinking and living like, most people do in their 20s. And that kind of caught up to me. I think that's what led to it. It might not have caused it, but definitely contributed to the condition.
So once you were diagnosed, after going through this traditional healthcare journey or route, what got you to wake up and to see that maybe that wasn't working and maybe your approach had to be a little bit more holistic or something that's like way more like not traditional, not conventional, like the carnivore diet? I was listening to a podcast today with Carnivore Aurelius and Rick Rubin, and he told his story when he first went into carnivore, how everything disappeared in a week, and he went to talk to his doctor about it. and his doctor basically fired him. He said, I can't work with you because you're going through carnival. So what was it for you?
Yeah, so I ended up working with, I think, like 6 doctors over the time period of being diagnosed and just like trying to get things under control for that exact reason. So it was like, the first thing that they always say when it comes to this disease and most diseases and conditions is medication. So like, this is what you need to take to suppress your immune system and get this under control. And at first I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know any better. So I just started taking the medication. It didn't, for the first few days, I felt a little bit better because I was basically rock bottom when I got diagnosed. But there was no improvement after that. It was like, still had symptoms, still felt terrible. Yeah. And as time went on, those symptoms just got worse and worse, and things were not under control at all. So to me, it was just obvious, like waking up every day feeling miserable. It was like, okay, I have to make a change here. Mm-hmm. So I found some doctors towards the end there, more like functional doctors that were more willing to entertain things like a carnivore diet or alternative ways of like approaching this disease. But I still wasn't getting to that point. So then it just became clear to me, like, if I want to heal, if I want to overcome this, I have to understand how to do that myself, and I have to go through that process myself.
Love it, man. So I want to talk about your program now. Where you're spreading this consciousness. You've creating this coaching program with Nick Marsh. I had a conversation with him to heal people's guts. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, it's so when I had kind of gotten through that period of dealing with these issues and gotten things under control,
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. So when I was going through that period myself, like I said, the doctors, like traditional healthcare wasn't much help for me. So I went to places like Twitter and Reddit and like different places online to find other people that were dealing with similar issues. So when I had got to the other side and resolved all of my issues, I wanted to go back and start helping other people. And at first it was just like posting online. Here's what worked for me. Here's some ideas of things that might help you guys. And there were so many people reaching out that it just became obvious, like I could, focus on this full time and really make a difference in other people's lives. So started kind of like informally doing that here and there. But it wasn't, having a full-time job that wasn't this, it wasn't possible to kind of manage both of those. So took that leap of faith and just, went full bore and started helping people. It's really focused on obviously digestive issues. That's, what I went through and obviously like diet and things like that, but it's very holistic. So my Twitter name obviously kind of gives that away, but a lot of what I did to get things under control is not just clean up my diet. That was definitely part of it, but it was the lifestyle factors as well. Yeah. Your sleep, your stress, exercise levels, grounding, sunlight, all of that stuff goes into it. So it's just a chance to kind of help those people more closely and give them, kind of a holistic protocol to go through and address the issues that they're dealing with.
Love it. So how did you get together with the other Nick to create the
We just met online. We're actually from the same city. And we didn't meet. He went to a rival high school of mine. But we never connected until we came on Twitter, which is pretty crazy to me. But yeah, just started talking. He had the same autoimmune disease as me and just had a lot of things in common. So it just made sense to start working together.
Of course. So how do you approach your clients? Maybe you can use Gavin's example. You have a client called Gavin, which you've posted through Twitter, through your coaching program. It's a really beautiful example. Maybe you can explain through there.
Yeah, so it's really just when I post these things online. So I'll post like, my story. This is what I was diagnosed with. These are the issues I was dealing with, and this is how I resolved that. So a lot of people just kind of reach out or comment on those kinds of posts like, hey, this is exactly what I'm dealing with. So it's a great way that, that's the main way that I kind of get in contact with these people, is they see this is what I dealt with, this is what I did, and they're kind of in a similar situation. But yeah, it's really just posting. Twitter is kind of the main thing that I use. Starting to get back into Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. But I haven't been as active there, but it's crazy. It's crazy how powerful social media is for meeting people and being able to connect with people, I have clients in Europe, I have clients in Mexico, and just all over the world, it's kind of cool.
Through working with these clients, have you seen some common problem or something that just keeps happening, something that's common with all of your clients? Maybe some type of disease, and why do you think it's recurring?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is just, I wouldn't necessarily say it's one thing. I think it's a combination of a few things. So like just having an unhealthy diet is probably the biggest issue with the majority of the population today. So people just eat processed foods or, low quality foods. And when you do that for a long enough time period, that builds up. You have all kinds of issues that come from that. That's the biggest part. The second is just like an overall unhealthy lifestyle. So, you have people that are, they work long hours, they don't get sleep, they don't get exercise, they're never getting sunlight. When they do eat, they're just rushing through it while they're eating. They're not chewing their food well, leads to all kinds of issues there. But yeah, I would say it's just the overall like structure of their lifestyle and their diet that is just not great. And over time that leads to all kinds of issues.
Okay. So do you have any goals for, on how you're going to spread your consciousness? Maybe it's not through this program, but where do you want to take this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think because it's nice to work with people, through the program that I have and kind of work with people closely, but I want to get the message out there further. So like not everybody is dealing with as serious of an issue as I was. And some people just have like general issues here and there. I think the best way to kind of reach out is like what we're doing here. So like podcasts or videos that you post on YouTube or, whatever it is, just kind of like opening up, showing people from your perspective, how you overcome these types of issues. Cause there's thousands, if not millions of people out there that are dealing with, all kinds of health issues. And if a short 30-second clip helps them overcome that, I think that's powerful. So trying to figure out, what that would be, if it's just posting more on like Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. But just trying to get the message out there that I think a lot of people just don't know it's possible to heal. They think it's normal to have health issues and that's just a part of life, and they accept it and they just, go on with that. But trying to kind of break that trend and get the message out there.
So going with that, there's something that I've seen recurring, or some common story that I'm seeing with, the health part of Twitter we're going through, is that people take their health for granted until it's taken away from them. And that's where they start to work on it. So how do you think we can stop this from happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something I think about a lot, because that's exactly what I did. Like before, when I was saying I had these like small issues for a while before I got diagnosed with my autoimmune disease. And I don't know if addressing those earlier on would have completely avoided this autoimmune disease, but I think it definitely played a role in getting what I got and how bad it was. I think it's just making people aware of it. Like small issues that might seem like minor symptoms, you're a little bit bloated or something like that. If you ignore that for a long enough time period, that could lead to something very serious, like an autoimmune disease like I have. So I think it's just making people aware of what could happen. This is my story. This is what happened when I did that, and just making them aware of it, and, showing them it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do something crazy, like completely overhaul your entire life and, move to a different city and live this crazy healthy lifestyle. You can just make small changes here and there, get more sleep, exercise more, do some stretches throughout the day, stuff like that, that really makes a big difference. I think that's important for people to hear.
Love it. So let's get into it, man. Let's talk about gut health. Why do you think gut health is something that's overlooked, maybe? And what are the things we should be looking for to take control of our gut health?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I think it's just like the way society is. We just don't. I think health in general just isn't a top priority for many people, and I think gut health specifically, like most people just aren't it's not flashy. Like when most people talk about like fitness or stuff like that, everybody wants to look good. Everybody wants to, lift weights and do stuff like that. That's easier to get people to focus on. But something like digestive health, it's not an interesting topic for most people. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just, trying to do the types of things I do and other people out there that post about like specific health niches. It's just showing like making it a little bit more flashy. Like there's, you can eat a delicious diet. You can, do all these fun things still and be healthy and focus on your gut health and prioritize your gut health, overcome serious issues like that. I think it's just like making people aware of it and leading by example and showing them these are the things that I do. You can do something similar and overcome those issues that you're dealing with.
Where do you think we take control of our gut health? Where do we start through our diet? What do you think? Where do you think we start? Yeah.
I think the biggest one is just being aware of your diet. So like most people just go to the grocery store, whatever they see, they buy. See chicken, they buy it. They see beef, they buy it. They don't really think like, is that quality beef? Yeah, like that you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know if it's high quality. I was actually talking about this earlier today. Bananas at the grocery store, they were from Ecuador. There's kiwis that were from like New Mexico or New Zealand or something. Like all of this food is just from all over the place. So I don't think anybody has a grasp over like what foods they're even eating. I think that's the first step. For me, what made that easy is just instead of going to like a grocery store to buy food, trying to find a farmer's market or a local farm or something like that where you can get food that was made or grown or, the animals are 20 minutes away from where you eat. That's the best place to start, I think, for a lot of people is just not necessarily getting organic and like grass fed and paying more money, but just knowing where your food comes from. I think that's important. But it's also just, educating yourself on how, like what foods should you be eating. I think most people aren't even aware of foods and how they can impact your body. Like a lot of people wake up and drink coffee on an empty stomach in the morning, which can cause all kinds of problems for you. There's people that eat, seed oils. Like before I got started on this journey, I didn't know what that meant. Knowing that foods like that can cause serious problems for you, I think it's important. But I don't know where it starts. I think it's just a lot of people, you have to like genuinely be interested in these things. So for me, it was getting diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that kind of set that off for me. If people aren't dealing with serious issues like that, it's kind of hard to motivate them to take control of these things and be interested in these things. If you're healthy, why change things up? Just go to the grocery store and keep buying the food you're eating. That goes back to what I was saying before, just kind of putting videos and stuff out there that shows people doing these kinds of things isn't like boring. You can live a fun life. You can go out and travel and eat delicious foods and still be healthy and still be on top of your health.
Love it. So why is gut health so important? Like, what does it affect? What does it connect to? Why should we care about our gut?
Yeah, I just posted about this, I think yesterday. Every part of your body in some way or another is connected to the rest of your body. So there really is no gut health. There's just your health. Like you have these different parts of your body and you can focus on, there's specific things you do to optimize those or resolve issues in those areas, but everything's connected. So that's one of the things, like a lot of people don't know they have gut issues because they're dealing with things like brain fog or anxiety or depression. You would never think, like you wake up and you feel depressed, you're not going to think, oh, my digestive system is out of whack. But they're all linked. There's, your thyroid, your liver, all these different parts of your body that are linked to your gut. And that's the important thing, is taking all those things into consideration. And when you have health issues, instead of like, you go to a doctor and it's like, hey, I have a headache, they're just, they're going to focus exclusively on that and not other parts of your body. That was a huge turning point in my journey here, is like, I had all these other issues that I was never connecting to my gut issues. And once I kind of opened my mind to that and realized how connected all these things are, started addressing all of them collectively, that's when things started to change for me.
Love it. You have a piece, I don't remember if it's a long form post or a thread on Twitter, that talks about the gut brain connection, which I found fascinating. So like you just said, everything in our body is connected to everything. How does our gut connect to our brain, or what does it have to do with the brain's health and our mental health?
Yeah, so there's a lot of direct and indirect connections there. There's like, for example, neurotransmitters. There's neurotransmitters that are made in your gut.
Hmm.
There's a connection between the vagus nerve, between the brain and the gut. It's connected through like your immune system, and then some of these more indirect connections, like I was saying before, with your thyroid. Like if you have an issue with your thyroid, that could be linked to your gut health. That could lead to like mental issues as well. There's just so many direct and indirect connections there. And that post that I had was specifically about like depression and anxiety and brain fog and stuff like that. A lot of people that are dealing with digestive issues have those symptoms and they don't make that connection. I think it's important to understand that and know how to address those issues. It's usually, there's all kinds of things that can cause disruptions there, but usually like, microbiome gets out of balance. You're dealing with bacterial overgrowth or just, general dysbiosis. Those kinds of issues can lead to these disruptions that cause anxiety or depression. So instead of just taking like a nootropic or, a stimulant or something that's going to help with like brain fog, the better approach is to understand what is that underlying issue that's causing it. Do you have bacterial overgrowth in your gut? Do you have leaky gut? What's causing that? Understand that, address that. And then instead of, having these symptoms come back all the time, you go back to living a normal life and don't have symptoms.
Love it. You have another one on fasting that came out last year. It's part of healing the gut. I never knew that was something. How does that work?
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. There's Case Bradford. I don't know if you found his account on Twitter. I really started to get into fasting, seeing a lot of the stuff he was posting about, and it's crazy. It's powerful how healing that can be. I mean, it could be something as simple as like you're just taking a break from eating food, so your body's not utilizing, sending blood flow and energy and all these things to your digestive tract, and instead of focusing on like digestion, it can use that for healing. So autophagy is one of the things I talked about in there. I think it's after like between 24 and 48 hours of not consuming food, your body goes into this state of autophagy where it's using those resources to break down, regenerate new cells and create healthier cells. So when you have like damaged cells, or if you're specifically in the gut, I think I talked about in that thread, if you have leaky gut. So there's like damage in the lining of your gut. And when you go through fasting, when you go into autophagy, that can help with repairing those cells in the lining of your gut. So that's something I did when I was dealing with leaky gut. I did a lot of fasting. There's different types like intermittent fasting, there's extended fasting. It depends on what your goal is, but for that specifically, like the healing, something like leaky gut, the extended fasting is pretty powerful for that stuff.
Is it something you do with your clients?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. With a lot of these things, there's situations where it can be helpful. There's situations where it could cause some issues. So it really just depends on what you're focusing on. Like somebody's dealing with bacterial overgrowth, for example, going through a period of an extended fast can help starve off those pathogenic bacteria and allow for the probiotic bacteria and commensal bacteria to kind of rebalance. So in situations like that, it can be really, really helpful. So it really just depends on where you're at with things. But I think it's a great example of some of these things. People think to be healthy, you have to go out and buy thousands of dollars worth of supplements and buy these biohacking tools and all this stuff, when in reality, you could do something as simple as just stop eating for a few hours or a day or something like that. And it's just as powerful, if not more powerful, than those biohacking tools.
Yeah, I was gonna ask on supplements. I wanted your thoughts on supplementation, because you have so many people that think that even if they don't have a what's it called? What's it called when you're missing a vitamin?
Deficiency.
Yeah, even if they don't have a deficiency, they take vitamin B12 because their friend was feeling fantastic after it. How does maybe supplementing on what you don't need to be supplementing on affect the gut?
Yeah, that's something I used to do before I started dealing with these issues. I would hear like, a lot of people do this. You go online somewhere and you read like B12 helps boost your, whatever it is, and they'll start supplementing B12.
Yeah.
There's situations, I mean, like with vitamin A, for example, or like vitamin D, if you get to the point where you're having like way too much of that, it can lead to issues. I don't think most people just don't have a grasp on supplementation or nutrients or when you should and shouldn't be using these things. With gut health specifically, one of the big issues with supplements is there's a lot of, when you look at the bottle, you see like the main ingredients. So if it's like B12, it'll say B12, and then below that, other ingredients. There's a lot of things like silicon dioxide and all these other additives and fillers and stuff that they put in there. In the best case scenario, they're just kind of like irritating to your gut. In the worst case scenario, some of these are linked to like autoimmune disease or like serious health issues. Those are a huge problem, and I think that's one of the big issues is people just supplement things, they don't know about that, so they're putting themselves at risk for really no reason. But that doesn't mean, there are a lot of situations where supplementation can be extremely helpful, if not essential. If you do have like a severe vitamin deficiency, it can be hard to just eat a lot of food and get it, through your food alone. If you're dealing with like inflammation, that can interrupt your body's ability to digest and utilize those nutrients. So in those types of situations, supplementation is good. You obviously want to find like the highest quality ones without those other ingredients. But I think people just need kind of a better understanding of supplements, the downsides to them, and when they should and shouldn't be using them.
Of course. So I want to go into stress now. I think I read a thread or maybe a tweet about stress damaging the gut. How does that work?
Yeah, there's, I guess, the two kind of main mechanisms there is if you're dealing with high stress levels, you're not managing those stress levels. Everybody has stress. It's not like you have to just live a life without any stress.
Of course.
But when you have those high stress levels, it can cause things like microbiome imbalances. So what I was talking about before, there's studies, there's evidence showing if you have high stress levels, it can disrupt your microbiome balance. So whether that's, making it a situation where you have bacterial overgrowth or whatever leads from that, there's all kinds of downstream effects from that. But that's one of them. The other is leaky gut. So the other condition I was talking about before, when you have those high stress levels, that can affect the lining of your gut. It can weaken the lining of your gut. It can lead to permeability. So that's where toxins and food particles and all these other things are leaking from your digestive tract into your bloodstream, which I'm sure you can imagine isn't good when you have that happen. So that's something I focus on a lot myself and with everybody I work with is, like I said, not avoiding stress, but how do you manage that stress? If it's meditation or if it's exercising, whatever it is that helps you do that, it's super important to have some of those things in place to make sure you don't get into situations like that. Because it's not just gut health, it's your overall health. Stress is one of the worst things for your overall health. I think it's important that people are aware of that.
I love that. Grounding lately has been something huge. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's practicing it. I love to do it. I'm grounded like 70% of the day. You've talked about grounding helping one of your clients. I'd love to know its relationship with the gut and, maybe your thoughts on overall health with grounding.
Yeah, so it's more so like not specifically so what I was talking about before, like fasting could, directly help you heal something like leaky gut, whereas grounding is more so, I guess, more of an indirect. So it can help with things like inflammation and like circulation and your mood and things like that. But it's mainly like with my clients, I talk about it. It's just a great habit to get into. And that the specific client you're talking about, I think she had never even heard of it before. So when I first said it, it sounds pretty crazy. Like when I first heard of grounding, it was like that sounds ridiculous, but it's crazy. Like if you go ground for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, you can feel a difference. You feel like your stress levels are lower. You just feel more at peace. And it's a powerful thing. But yeah, for me, because I think a lot of these, when you deal with digestive issues, like I said before, there's anxiety, there's depression, there's brain fog, there's inflammation, all of these things that come from that. And something like grounding is a really helpful way to not necessarily, resolve the root cause of those problems, but it can help with the symptoms and, these issues that you're dealing with as you go through that process.
I love it. You mentioned coffee a couple minutes ago, maybe affecting you when you have an empty stomach. I take my coffee in an empty stomach. I did not know that was true. I thought it was good for you to take it in an empty stomach. But something I see a lot is people with gut problems. I still see them take coffee regularly. And I can give you an example with my grandpa. He's had gut problems probably for like 40 years and terrible problems. And his doctor, um, he tells he lets my grandpa know that coffee's fine. He can still drink 2 to 3 cups a day, but I'm pretty sure it's not the best for the gut. Is it true?
Yeah, it's so there is some evidence out there. It can weaken the lining of your gut. It can also cause like microbiome issues. It really just depends. There's a few things I always talk about when it comes to coffee. Quality of the coffee is a huge factor. So most coffee, like if you go to the grocery store, you get Folgers or like some of these common brands you see. They're there's mycotoxins in there. They're prone to mold and all kinds of issues. That's probably the biggest factor. I think a lot of people are just not consuming high quality coffee, but it's extremely acidic. So if you have some kind of, most of them are extremely acidic. I know there's some types that are like lower acidity, but if you're dealing with issues like an ulcer or like I said before, a leaky gut or something like that, it can worsen that. And it's just irritating. So I do have some clients that can tolerate coffee fine. They're not really dealing with any issues that it would directly worsen. So having like a small amount of coffee here and there isn't going to be the end of the world. But yeah, for the most part, I always just recommend like trying some of these alternatives. I can handle it now. I went through a long period where I couldn't have it at all. I do have it occasionally here. I prefer espresso, but I've found alternatives like yerba mate is a great example. Matcha. There's other things out there that have caffeine in them, still give you that boost. I think yerba mate is also like has nootropic properties to it as well. So
Yeah.
I just prefer to go with things like that. They're not they don't come with as many of those downsides as coffee does. But like I said, it's not the end of the world. If people can tolerate it, they're not dealing with some of these other issues. I think it's fine to have coffee. It's not something you have to cut out.
Yeah. Is there a reason why you choose espresso over any option of coffee, or it's just personal?
That's a good question. I don't know. I used to drink coffee, and that was the thing I always had was like coffee or cold brew or I just always preferred that. And then just all of a sudden, I just always preferred espresso. I don't know if it's like a taste thing. There's a place near where I live that has really good espresso. But yeah, I don't know. My preferences kind of changed over time.
What about energy drinks? Are they terrible for the gut?
Yeah, there's definitely some that are worse than others, but with a lot of these things, so there's like citric acid. There's just ingredients in there that are not great. Like citric acid is a lot of times I think it's called like modified citric acid, which is derived from like black mold. And I think
Wow.
majority of energy drinks that I've seen have that in there. There's all kinds of just like artificial flavorings and artificial sugars and stuff like that that's not great for you. And then also just the excessive amounts of caffeine. I think most of them have like 200 or 400 grams of
Holy,
milligrams of,
crazy.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I think a lot of people, so going back to kind of the coffee thing. So a lot of people that have gut issues, they don't do well with coffee. It's the acidity or whatever it is that causes that. So they'll look for other sources of caffeine. A lot of people will go to an energy drink, and since it doesn't have that acidity, it doesn't make them feel terrible the way that coffee does, like right after having it. But I think it's one of those things that even though you don't immediately feel that impact, things like artificial colorings and stuff like that can have long-term effects on you, and are linked to things like cancer and serious issues you don't want to deal with. So always something I recommend staying away from.
Love it. I want to get it now into like people who are lactose intolerant, because I've heard you talk about this a lot, and I've read a couple pieces on your Twitter feed on this. And personally, I know people that once they stop drinking and eating pasteurized processed lactose and they go for the raw option, they feel 10 to 100x better, and they don't get the intolerant symptoms. So can you
Yeah.
explain what's going on there, or why people maybe are lactose intolerant?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not an expert on this. I know there's other people out there that are a little bit more well versed. So my experience with it is my whole life I did not know what raw dairy was. It was illegal where I lived. I didn't even know what that meant. So I always had like this sensitivity to dairy. If I would have milk or yogurt, it really didn't matter. Cheese, anything. I just got bloated. My stomach felt terrible. So I always just stayed away from it. There was like probably a 5 or 6 year period I didn't have any dairy products. Started reading about what raw dairy is and what pasteurization is, and started seeing stories of people like, I used to be lactose intolerant and then I tried raw dairy and it was totally fine. So that was kind of like what opened my eyes to the whole, dairy situation. But it's not just the raw versus pasteurized. There's also, like, when you go to the grocery store, I think there was something went viral on Twitter a couple of days ago, like Fairlife or something like that. There's the companies that make these dairy products. They're animals. It's well known these animals are just not healthy. They're packed into factories. They're pumped with antibiotics and hormones and all kinds of stuff. That if you're eating meat that comes from that animal, or you're drinking the dairy products that come from that, it's not going to be great for you. So that's a big part of it as well. And then there's things like the A2 versus A1. So there's some studies showing that A1, different types of proteins in the milk. So there's like A1 is linked to inflammation and just digestive symptoms in people, even if they're not dealing with underlying issues. Whereas like A2 is believed to be much easier for people to tolerate. So a lot of that is like anecdotal, but there is some studies showing A1's a little bit harder for people to tolerate. So that, taking all of that stuff into consideration. So when I first started trying dairy again, I started with A2 dairy, I started with raw, and then I also did fermented because the lactose is a little bit more broken down and there's less lactose in things like yogurt. Mm-hmm. So that's where I started, and I didn't have any of these symptoms. I felt completely fine. So over time, just continued having more and more and more of that. And I think it was one of those situations where my body had to kind of build back up a tolerance and be able to handle that well. But now I can handle all of it completely fine. If it's raw, if it's pasteurized, I don't have any issues with it anymore. I always stick to the raw. I always try to get A2. But if I do have like a pasteurized milk or something like that, it's fine now. It's very occasional when I have that, like if I go out to get ice cream or something somewhere. Obviously that's probably pasteurized, but yeah, it's crazy. It's like a whole world that people don't know of. All you know is like the pasteurized milk that comes from the grocery store, and most of those are very, very low quality. So it's not surprising why people can't tolerate those.
Yeah, I want to talk about raw milk now, raw dairy, because I've seen people go crazy on this now. Not only helping gut health, but helping every area of the health of their health. Why is raw dairy so good for us, and why is it illegal in most places?
The second one's a great question. I wish I could answer that. There's all kinds of, so like,
why do you think, at least?
I don't know. I know with a lot of these, like the food industry and pharmaceutical industries, everything's just, it's like corrupt. The people are able to monetize pasteurization, like pasteurized products, whereas the raw products seem to come from local farms and, a lot of places where there's like a big Amish population. They're usually the people that, produce raw dairy products. So they don't profit from that. These ultra like pasteurized products come from these major corporations that sell to the grocery stores and stuff like that. That's the best explanation I would have. I really don't know why it's illegal. It's crazy to me that's illegal. But in terms of like why it's so good for you. So I know Paul Saladino talks about this a lot. There's just a crazy amount of, there's so many nutrients and enzymes and all kinds of beneficial things in, especially like cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk. And when you go through that pasteurization process, I don't know exactly like how much of that is killed off. I think it's a very large percentage of it. So you lose a lot of those benefits. You lose the enzymes that help you digest those foods. So when you go to something like raw milk, it's like you're finally getting the real thing. You get all the nutritional benefits from it. It's in a live. It has these live things in it, whereas pasteurized milk is just like a dead product. There's really not much to it.
Something that I've seen a couple times before that maybe you could help explain. I don't know how this works exactly, but I've heard and seen a couple people with gut issues where they cannot digest things properly. And once they start to drink raw milk or raw butter, they I don't know if this is exactly how it works, but they start to get help from the bacteria to digest.
So yeah, I mean, it could be your microbiome. So there's the bacteria in your microbiome. There's beneficial bacteria that help break down foods you eat, whether it's like fiber and fermenting that fiber, whatever it is, they help with that digestive process. So when you have things like dysbiosis, whether it's from an overgrowth of like harmful bacteria, or you just don't have enough of the probiotic bacteria that you need, whatever that is, when you have things like raw dairy, they have those probiotic bacteria in there. They have those enzymes in there that help with digestion. So reintroducing products like that can help like rebalance your microbiome and get you back to a point where you're digesting foods well again. So it's, I mean, if you're just dealing with kind of like, there are some people that just have a general imbalance in their microbiome. They just don't have enough probiotic bacteria, or there's just kind of an imbalance there. Introducing things like kefir or yogurt, raw dairy products can be super, super helpful with that.
Love it. What about colostrum? It's the first time that I've ever seen like this product be talked about through your thread. And as soon as that thread came out, my cousin actually asked me, where do I get this here in Mexico? And I just sent him your thread to see if he could figure it out. There's no colostrum here in Mexico. I don't know why. I know a couple farms. Every Sunday I go to this like flea market that they arrange every like Sunday morning, where a bunch of different farms from different parts of Mexico get together to sell stuff.
Yeah.
There's no colostrum. What is it? What's behind this this thing?
Yeah, I got introduced to it. What I mentioned before, one of the doctors I worked with at the end was a functional doctor. She introduced me to colostrum, so that when I was dealing with leaky gut, specifically, that was one of her recommendations. So it's the first milk that's produced after, and it's not just cows. It's certain like several different types of animals, but it's the first milk they produce after they have offspring. So there's, when you have a newborn baby, they have all these unique needs for nutrients and things like that. So it's loaded with all kinds of nutrients that you're just not going to get from a normal mature milk. And yeah, it's crazy, but it's not just with gut health. I've seen people talk about it has like anti-cancer properties. It helps with inflammation. It really is. They call it liquid gold. And I think when you read through and see all of the benefits from it, it's crazy to me that it's not talked about more, like you're saying.
This might be a stupid question, but if it's a milk that it's being produced from the mom for the newborn, specifically for the nutrients of the newborn, why would it be good for us?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know. I mean, these nutrients, like a nutrient is a nutrient. So like a vitamin B or vitamin A or something like that, it's going to be the same, like, you know, in that form, it's going to be the same form. It can benefit like a baby cow. It can also benefit a human. I don't know like why specifically there is a lot of overlap there between the benefits between like a newborn cow and a human. But like with colostrum specifically, humans make that as well. So when a mother has a child, she's producing colostrum through her breast milk. So the baby gets that as well. I don't know if there's a lot of overlap in terms of like the nutrients from human colostrum versus cow colostrum. But yeah, it's interesting. And when I posted that thread, I got a lot of people asking me like, if it's for the newborn cow, isn't that bad? You're taking it from the cow. I did kind of look into that a little bit because it's a valid question. Like if a baby cow needs that and you're taking it away from it. But there is, from what I found, there seems to be like 2 to 3 times the amount that the baby actually needs is what's produced by the mother. So they have this excess amount of that can be used for like human consumption and other things like that.
Beautiful. There's a I don't know if it's an old thread, but I remember reading it when I was in summer vacation about artificial blue light affecting our guts. How does that work?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that impacts it. So the lining of your gut, there's some studies showing when you're exposed to blue light, artificial blue light, it can impact the strength and the health of the cells in the lining of your gut. But there's all kinds of, so like if you're, I forget what the study, I think it was a human study, might have been an animal study, but they exposed either a human or an animal to artificial blue light late at night, and then the next day that animal was like craving junk food or preferred junk food over healthier food. So it impacts the foods that we crave. It impacts hunger levels, so it can make you, when you're getting exposed to that, it makes you more hungry. That's why I think a lot of people late at night, they're watching TV or whatever it is, they get hungry, they want to go eat some junk food. So it impacts it that way. But on a cellular level, like your light environment, whether you're getting natural light, whether you're getting blue light, that all affects, your cellular health, and it can lead to inflammation. It can lead to microbiome imbalances as well. So there's all kinds of impacts there. And I just noticed myself, like if I stay up late at night, if I'm working too late, or if I watch TV before I go to bed, then the next day I wake up, I feel a little bit off. I don't feel, not just with my digestive health, but like mentally, I feel a little bit off. My energy levels are lower. So it's one of those things, like everybody wants to see, where's a study that shows this, but it's like, if you just, do it yourself, like just stop using
Yeah,
blue light late at night, use blue light blockers, use natural lighting, you'll feel a difference. And to me, that's really all I need to know that that's true.
of course. So I now want to talk a little bit about your health, and how maybe the first question is, how do you approach your work? How do you get to work? How do you, like, how do you write your threads? Where do you go through to maybe grab this inspiration, or you know where I'm going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always been the type of person that's very structured, I guess. Like everything's kind of scheduled. I do this from this time to this time. And I've found over time what helps me the most is kind of, you have these like what I call daily non-negotiables. So it's like every day, wake up and get sunlight as soon as you can, get some hydration in the morning, some fluids, some electrolytes, stuff like that. Get movement throughout the day. So whether it's lifting weights or martial arts, whatever I'm doing to get movement, these non-negotiable things I'm sticking to every day. But outside of that, I think it's important to kind of leave some space for like creativity and for yourself to like explore and do what just feels natural. So there's periods throughout the day where obviously if I have like a meeting scheduled or something, I have to be doing that. But outside of that, I like to kind of leave some creativity. So I'll go, walk to a park or something, and maybe I have an idea of like a thread I should post about, or, just go walk around the block, whatever it is, having that creativity, going out and exploring and just living life. It helps give me ideas about things to post about, or, maybe this is something people are dealing with and maybe this would help them. I found that to be kind of the best structure for me on a daily basis.
Love it, man. I know you have to leave quickly, so I'm gonna just ask two more questions. What brings you most joy in life?
That's a good question. I think there's two things. One is just being with like family and loved ones. That to me, so like before I kind of started doing this, I was working stressful job, never had time to do those things, be with family, and uh, you know, spend time with the people that mean the most to me. So that's something that brings me a lot of joy. The other is just traveling. When I was younger, I traveled a lot, and then I've gone through this period the last few years, like kind of when COVID started, where I just haven't traveled as much. Whenever I'm traveling and I'm going to like experiencing new cultures, like, going to Guatemala or Mexico, these different places I've been, it's always fascinating to me to like experience these new cultures, the cuisines, and just the way they live. I think those two things are what bring me the most joy, and that's what I try to do the most.
Love it, man. That was beautiful. To end this off, is there any advice you'd like to leave the people listening to this podcast, or myself?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to what we were saying before, how do people get started with all this, or how do they kind of turn things around and become healthy? And I think biggest thing is just wherever you are, obviously, if you're dealing with health issues, you need to take those serious. You need to address those. But even if you're not, just prioritizing your health. I think so many people get caught up in this rat race of, you got to make money, you got to be successful, you got to do this, you got to do that. And you never prioritize, you just push your health away. When you get into a situation like I was, where you're diagnosed with a disease or whatever, you're dealing with some kind of health issue, in those moments, you would give anything to have your health back. So I think the most important thing for everybody is just, you can prioritize these other things. You can, try to be successful and make a lot of money, whatever it is that makes you happy, but never lose sight of that health. Because when you lose that, everything else comes crashing down.
I love it. Nick, thank you so much for joining me, man. That was quick, but that was amazing.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate the invite. Glad we could finally do this.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too.